In today's show, the Blazers make moves at the deadline. But did they get worse? Did they get worse on purpose? Well, we're Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen every single weekday, coming at you Monday through Friday, free on all platforms, so make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Trade deadline day, it came and passed. Came and done went, and the Trailblazers made some moves, reshaping the roster. Let's just cut to the chase. I don't think they got better, and I think maybe got worse on purpose. Hard to know, quite frankly, how and why exactly it went down. But let's talk about what happened. I'll give you my honest opinion. I have sort of the more rosier opinion that I think, if you want to disagree with maybe my natural pessimism, that there is a generous read, there is an optimistic read about what the Blazers did today that I think you can take into the off season, and then we'll look around the West and see what other teams did stuff and got better to close the show. But first, here's what happened. The Blazers made a trade. We talked about this yesterday. The first trade they made was right before tip-off of Wednesday night's game against the Warriors. They traded Josh Hart to the New York Knicks in exchange for Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, and a lottery-protected 2023 first-round pick. Then they moved today, sending 2 second-round picks, part of a 3-team deal that involved the Charlotte Hornets and the Philadelphia 76ers, sending out 2 picks in exchange for defensive specialist Matisse Thybulle. Then, part of a multi-team deal, a 4-team deal, the Blazers got involved with the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Warriors, sending Gary Payton back to the Bay, back to the Warriors, and in exchange, they received Kevin Knox, who's playing for the Pistons, and 5 second-round picks. Also, prior in the Josh Hart, Cam Reddish trade, they had received Svi Mihalik from the Knicks, and he was rerouted to the Charlotte Hornets. So, all told, the Blazers bring in Cam Reddish, Matisse Thybulle, Kevin Knox, Ryan Arcidiacono, and 5 second-round picks, and they send out Josh Hart, 2 second-round picks, and Gary Payton II. So, I don't want to phrase this like, how should you feel? Because this is my podcast. I feel the way I feel. So, I think maybe this is stupid to clarify this, but this is like my read on the situation, and you hopefully you can use my takes to inform your own. I think it's very reasonable maybe to disagree with me and feel better about the Blazers, but I feel the way I feel. I think the Josh Hart trade was okay business. I think getting a first-round pick in 2023 for Josh Hart, pretty good, especially considering the Blazers' situation where they have a lottery-protected pick that is owed to the Bulls. So if the Blazers do indeed make the playoffs this year, that will convey to the Bulls. But if they miss it, they get to keep it, and it's lottery-protected with that same style of thing. The Blazers have to make the playoffs to give it to the Bulls through 2028. It's encumbered for many years, to use a CBA term, encumbered through 2028. You don't see pick predictions often like that. I think the Blazers were pretty confident they were going to make the playoffs last year, and things went the other way. So getting that first round pick back in exchange for Hart, pretty good. I'm not a big Cam Reddish guy. He certainly was highly recruited coming out of high school. He was supposed to be really good. He had some flashes early in his career with the Hawks where he was really good. He just fell out of favor in New York and just never, hasn't played since early December, basically has only made 20 appearances this year. I am maybe skeptical that he turns into like a high-level wing, but he certainly has the skill set to become that. He's 6'8". He's got a little bit of off-the-dribble juice. He was supposed to be a shooter coming out of college, coming out of Duke. He just hasn't really put that together with any consistency. Showed flashes of being a pretty good defender, but I don't think he's been like a high-level defender with consistency. He's shown a little bit of 3, a little bit of D, but not enough to be like a true 3-and-D wing, although he has some of the skills. I'm pretty skeptical of him being like an impactful NBA player, But he wouldn't be the first dude, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, to not stick in his first two spots, find a place that sticks for him, and end up being pretty good. It wouldn't be shocking if he proved me wrong. But like, I want to put my cards on the table. I'm not much of a believer in maybe him necessarily figuring out from the little bit I've watched of him. Certainly in his early Atlanta days, I was much more of a believer than whatever happened to him in New York. The 2 second round picks in exchange for Matisse Thybulle, I like it. I mean, that's good business. Matisse is a guy who is an elite defender, elite defensive playmaker, steals and blocks and like the sort of statistical defensive stuff, but also just like he's interested and intrigued with playing defense, right? Like you're gonna get it from him on that end. He's gonna provide the sort of intensity, the effort, and all of those things. He's not like super big or anything. He's like more of like a 2-3 than a 3-4, and I think the Blazers probably need a 3-4 than a 2-3. But he's longer than Josh Hart, even though they're about the same size. He's a better defensive player. The problem is that he's really limited on offense. The knock on Matisse Thybulle is just he never put it together enough on offense to be able to play in high leverage situations. It's why the Sixers moved on from him and went with Jalen McDaniels, who's just like straight up better player than him. Maybe not dramatically better, and Matisse has shot more frequently and he's higher volume and more accurately than Josh Hart. So like the Blazers get, assuming that he's like similar to Josh Hart in some ways, he is, you get a better defensive player and a guy who's just straight up shot it better this year than Josh. Hart brings a level of rebounding, that end-to-end transition push, a little bit of ball handling, a little bit of secondary playmaking, although he wasn't as good as that and wasn't asked to do that very much here. But I think the price that they paid for Thybulle is great. It's good stuff. Great is like maybe an overstatement, but like even with his weaknesses, I think the cost of what it took to bring Thybulle here is good business. So early on in the trade deadline, the Cam Reddish and the Thybulle stuff, while I don't think that's super exciting by any means. I think Josh Hart's better than both those guys pretty easily. But you get a little bit bigger because Cam Reddish is 6'8". You get a little bit longer because Thybulle's got a much longer wingspan than Hart. Like, yeah, sure. I could be talked into it. Then right up against the deadline, it is announced that the Blazers are part of this multi-team deal that sends Gary Payton to the Warriors. And according to reporting from Jason Quick of The Athletic, Payton just was unhappy. He was unsettled, unhappy, and didn't want to be in Portland. And the Blazers just said, okay, if you don't want to be here, we'll get you out of here. And they traded him for 5 second-round picks and Kevin Knox. Knox was highly touted, right? Like coming out of Kentucky, if you can remember back to 2018, he was a hot pick to win Rookie of the Year for the Knicks. It has never worked out for him. Even playing on the Pistons, who are one of the worst teams in the league, he could never carve out a real role. Just can't shoot. There's times where he's with the Pistons that he's kind of his energy has allowed him to overcome some of that, but it's hard to be a wing in this league and his sort of the size and what Knox brings to the table if you don't have shooting. It's like it's a big problem in the league. I don't expect him to have much of a role. I expect Reddish and Thybulle to play and be part of the rotation. I don't expect Knox to have a role. But the real thing here is losing Gary Payton, and losing Gary Payton for a young dude who's hasn't found it in Kevin Knox and 5 second-round picks. It's hard to know, all of a sudden this was the trade deadline where second-round picks were the things that people were tossing around for value. So, yeah, what second-round picks are they are a chance to draft Jabari Walkers of the world. You find a gem in the end of the draft, and I think Jabari Walker's pretty clearly an NBA player at 57, but the Blazers don't need 5 chances to draft Jabari Walker. They need high-level starters to put next to Damian Lillard. So really what these second-round picks are more functionally, they're like sweeteners for a future trade. Cool. It's just... Gary Payton was their big signing this summer. They used their mid-level exception because they paid him more than the taxpayer mid-level line, a line that the Warriors legally could not go up to. So they just basically outbid the incumbent team by virtue of the way the salary cap works or the CBA works, contracts work. They were able to pry Payton away from a place he probably wanted to be, and he was just never happy here. It sounds like he was never happy here. I don't know. I'm reading from Quick's reporting in The Athletic. So it's like I would say, generally speaking, that one seems bad. And because you leave the trade deadline down Josh Hart and up, guys who are kind of like fringy rotation players. No, none of these dudes guaranteed to play like big minutes on a playoff team. I think Hart is. So none of these guys guaranteed to play big minutes on a playoff team and 5 second-round picks. I haven't even mentioned Ryan Arcidiacono. Insurance, third point guard, end of the bench type of guy. At one point, I think a friend of mine, I said this on the podcast last night, was really into Archie or Arch as he called him, being a legit NBA backup point guard. I don't think that's shared across the league, but like it's not like a negative. He's just like a end of the bench, emergency point guard type player. I don't really have a take on him. Go Heels is my take. Villanova broke my heart too many times, or at least once, really bad time. But like you leave with like fringe rotation guys. You lose Josh Hart, who was, for all of his flaws, brought it every night. And Gary Payton, who was supposed to be this big prize offseason thing that was a guy who's going to transform your defense. On paper, the Blazers are worse. They're worse. They're worse today than they were when it started. They're worse. And I think that's the frustrating part, right? It's not that, at least it's not necessarily, I should say, that they screwed up this trade deadline, because I think there's a way to read this as like they didn't screw it up. They're moving the target a little bit. But this team was, on the edge of the play-in. They've talked pretty openly about wanting to be a playoff team. Their needs were shooting, better upgrades to their defense, and size. They got a little bit taller. That's it. Let's talk about why I feel this is so underwhelming a little bit more, and then I'll give you my sort of rosy outlook, optimist's outlook on this in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you that this show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions and monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions that they forgot about, like the streaming service you bought to watch just one show on, or that free trial that you never even used. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify your subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Simply find the subscription you don't want, press cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. No more long hold times with customer service or tedious emailing back and forth. Rocket Money makes canceling subscriptions as easy as a click of a button. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. So stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. All right. I usually don't stretch the all right out. That's a new all right just for the post-trade deadline all right. The Blazers are worse than they were. They're worse than they were yesterday. I think you can disagree with that. Maybe you're a big Thybulle believer. Maybe you're a big Cam Reddish believer. But I think the Blazers are worse than they were yesterday. And I think the strange part about it is it kind of feels like that's on purpose. Joe Cronin didn't speak to the media today. He's going to speak to the media Friday, so his comments, which I don't think they'd be like super valuable, but I think that I certainly would share his spin, if nothing else, in this space. He's going to speak to the media on Friday, February 10th. So if there's noteworthy things that come out of that moment, that press conference, we'll discuss them on Monday's show. So look for that. But the real takeaway for me is that this felt, the Blazers got worse. I feel like they got worse on purpose, and that's underwhelming because they're a team with the best player, franchise icon, is 32 years old, and Dame might be having the best season of his career. If he's not having the best season of his career, he's having one of the 2 or 3 best of his career. I think you could argue this is the best he's ever played. And instead of empowering him to take at least a punch at the playoffs, the Blazers aren't going to really make noise in the playoffs. Even if they made minor moves or stood pat, right? But a puncher's chance, if you don't get worse and you try to improve the team, you address some of their needs. Shooting, which they just need another shooter. upgrading their defense, which they might have. They might have. They might be better across the board on defense with Thybulle and Cam Reddish, but I don't really know. And size. They still don't have enough size. Yusuf Nurkic still on the roster, and he's hoping to be back for after the All-Star break. But if he's not, you're really small. And if he is, you're still pretty darn small. Drew Eubanks is, 6'9", but he's not like super bulky. He's not like this big, he's physical and plays hard and all those things, but he's not super bulky. They needed more size. They just needed to add more size. That had to be a priority if they were serious about going for it. Adding some shooting seemed to be a serious priority if they were serious about going for it. They didn't address those. And it feels underwhelming. And why I think that it feels like they're getting worse on purpose is because maybe that's the plan. Maybe they looked at the way the West was shaking out. Maybe they looked at their first, this first stretch of games, the first 55 games, and said, we're not very good. And if we miss the playoffs, we're going to get something like the 11th pick in the draft, 12th pick in the draft, whatever it is. So you get 12th pick in the draft. The Knicks make the playoffs. You get the 20th pick in the draft. You have 12 and 20 in this year's draft. You can then, if you have those 2 first-round picks, send one to the Chicago to free up the obligation you owe to them of a future pick, or you can say, hey, we'll give you next year's pick. We'll take off the restrictions because you're comfortable because you're going to have 2 draft picks or whatever it might be, right? Like you'll have more ammo to feel comfortable lifting those restrictions. So it seems like to me, or you have them just straight up to trade, right? You have 12 and 20, 9 and 19, whatever it might be, where they land in the lottery. Obviously, they could win the lottery, and that's really going to change things. But like, really, realistically, whatever, you're gonna have 2 picks in the top 20. And this year, if you miss the playoffs, and it feels like that's what the Blazers said they would rather do. You get, the restricted free agent rights on Reddish, the restricted free agent rights on Thybulle. You can figure out what you want to do with Knox if you want to keep him. You have like team control over young guys that if they are good this year, you can keep them in the fold. You don't have future money owed to anybody. You get these second round picks that can use as sweeteners. And it's hard to read the Gary Payton thing as anything as them just cutting bait with someone who didn't want to be around. But it's like, it seems like the plan was, or they got to this point and they said, this season isn't going to be for us. And we're just going to head the other way. We're not going to aggressively head the other way. Not like last year where we fake injuries and like hold guys out, but we're going to say, hey, we'll just naturally miss the playoffs because we're going to get a little bit worse and teams around us got better. That'll happen. That'll take care of itself, and we'll be comfortable where we land, and we'll try again in the summertime. It feels underwhelming because they didn't go for it with Damian Lillard. If you're a longtime listener, regular listener to this podcast, if you're not and you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Funny time to get on board, but I'm super excited that this is your first Locked On Blazers because every Locked On Blazers is somebody's first Locked On Blazers. But it's a bummer because you have Dame playing at this level. You have Jeremy Grant playing maybe the best basketball of his career. You have Anthony Simons having the best season of his career. Those are arguably your 3 best players having career seasons. They weren't going to make a move to like the big splash. If you're a regular listener, like I was saying before I got sidetracked a little bit, it's like I have been saying like it makes more sense and it's easier for them if they are going to make an all-in type of move to do it in the summertime because that's when those all-in moves are more available to them. Like everyone's screaming about Kevin Durant, like kind of seems like the Brooklyn Nets just negotiated specifically, the reporting basically from Chris Haynes and also of Adrian Wojnarowski is like they basically just negotiated with the Suns. It was just like let's make it happen. The Suns called them, they made the trade happen. It wasn't like Durant like was openly shopped around or anything like that. And so, the Blazers they couldn't have matched Phoenix's offer, but it's like the idea was if there is an unhappy star somewhere, the summertime is usually more typically when one, teams are more likely to blow things up, and 2, it's a little bit easier to Blazers to make a massive trade, totally reshape the roster, and then have several months to kind of piece the stuff back together, either via the draft or via minimum free agent signings or future trades or whatever it might be. Like the summer is often when rosters get remade more aggressively than at the trade deadline when things really come together in about 72 hours after months and months of negotiating, but no action really happening. It always made sense for them to wait for the summertime to make their big move. That's what I've been saying on the show. It's like that to me, that always made sense. So I'm not like killing them for not going all in. I'm killing them for not clearly trying to get better and address their needs. That's why this feels underwhelming. Because they didn't address those needs and they didn't try to get better. And to me, they're worse on paper today than they were yesterday. And you come into the deadline with the team you have and the group you have and Jeremy Grant in free agency and all this sort of, and Damian Lillard playing as well as he is, and you get a little bit worse, probably on purpose. That stinks. That is hard to stomach as a fan. It's hard to stomach. I totally, if you are super mad at the Blazers right now, I totally get it. If you're not, if you're more optimistic, here's why you're more optimistic. It always made sense for the Blazers to make a bigger move in the summer. And nothing they specifically did today, other than, I guess, trading Gary Payton, but nothing they specifically did today has limited their chances to do that. They're still going to have Anthony Simons. They're still going to have Shaedon Sharpe, their two best trade pieces. They are still going to have, they added another first-round draft pick to the haul. They've added these second-round picks if you need to sweeten stuff down the line. Like, if you are willing to be optimistic, the optimistic read, the generous read, is that nothing has changed in terms of their goal to make a big splash this summer. If they're going to make an all-in move, and they were always going to make an all-in move in July, nothing they did today prevents them from making an all-in move in July. But I'll say this. The whole idea of this season was to assess what fit, get incrementally better, and then set yourself up to be really good next year. The Blazers basically been selling us on this plan since training camp, when they were pretty openly honest about them probably not being a very good team this year. And then they started really good and kind of changed expectations. But the Joe Cronin and Billups and even Damian Lillard to some extent were pretty open about this team not being very good this season. They were very honest about this team not being that talented. And whatever, like that's maybe our perception has changed a little bit. But the idea was identify what works, identify what doesn't work, get incrementally better at the trade deadline, and incrementally better in the summertime, and then next year you've got your chance. You've got your chance to be really good, to be a team that can talk about going deep into the playoffs, a team that can talk about Western Conference Finals and even the F word, the NBA Finals. Like for real, like the idea was to get incrementally better. They got incrementally worse. They really did. And I think what the hard part is for me is that if they're asking you to have faith and believe in all of that, you've been sold this before by the previous regime. And if you were really thinking like this is so different than it used to be, which I do think has been a media talking point around this team. Does this feel different to you? It doesn't feel different to me. And if you continue to push okay, we're going to go for it down the road. Hey, there's going to be a time when we'll go all in and we'll go all in. When it becomes obvious that Dame's 32, the Blazers have to do it this summer, the path that they have to tread, the path they have to walk to become really good is so stinking narrow. You want to do it incrementally. You want to get there with steps. A good Jeremy Grant, a good fit. Anthony Simons, a breakout year. Okay, we're going to make this trade, get a little bit better. We're going to make this trade, get a little better. And then with these parts now, it's steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 worked. Steps 5 and 6 are super big swing, and then some minimum signings behind that big swing. And now we're in the contender circle, or at least much closer to it. The Blazers didn't do that. And maybe they set themselves up for a big trade, and maybe it happens, and you go back and you look and you say, remember that February 10th episode that Mike did? What a freaking doofus. I'm comfortable being wrong. Because how I feel is that they've set themselves up for June and July, or July and August are going to be so crucial for them to perfectly thread this needle, to perfectly walk down this path. And that path is just wildly narrow. It is so stinking thin. It is the margin for error as you continue to push it down the line with the acknowledgement that Damian Lillard is aging. It's real. Like, he's fantastic. He might even have 2 more seasons at this level. But if you waste this one, then you have 164 regular season games to get it right. And that's assuming perfect health. It's assuming Jeremy Grant stays at this level and stays on the team. It's assuming Anthony Simons continues, from this year to a thing that's even better in the following years and all those things. Like, it's tough. I think they got worse, and I think it's okay to feel like a little bit, I don't know if cheated is the right word, but a little bit miffed by how things went down. Let's look at the rest of the league. Who else got better in the West? A little quick trade deadline primer of moves around the league. But first, I want to tell you about our new sponsor, FanDuel, the only app you're going to need at your Super Bowl party, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm super excited to tell you about our new sports betting partner for Locked On. It's FanDuel, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. You can download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57. That's this very weekend with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's look around the league. The Blazers probably got a little bit worse. Who got better? The Denver Nuggets. They traded away Bones Highland to the Clippers and got Thomas Bryant. The Nuggets probably need a backup center. They're good enough to win a championship without doing anything, probably. I think they bolstered their bench a little bit. Bones Highland's a fun player, but he's kind of been out of the rotation, and they have been losing his minutes, and it's been clear that he was going to go somewhere. He heads to the LA Clippers. Grizzlies, they added Luke Kennard, lefty shooter. Went to the wrong college, but he's a pretty good basketball player. Kings basically didn't do anything. They added Kessler Edwards. The Mavericks added Kyrie Irving. The Clippers really bolstered their bench, adding Mason Plumlee, adding Eric Gordon, and adding Bones Highland. I think the Clippers got better. I do. The Suns, they got Kevin stinking Durant. It's somewhat unclear to me who's the fifth starter in Phoenix when all is said and done. But I'll tell you this: they are a championship level team. They are probably in some circles, not on FanDuel just yet, but creeping there, favorites to win the NBA title just because of their top end talent. If Kevin Durant's healthy, they're going to be very, very, very good. Pelicans didn't really do anything. They added Josh Richardson. The Timberwolves shook up their point guard spot, added Mike Conley. The Warriors added Gary Payton and sent out James Wiseman. The Blazers got a little bit worse. The Jazz got a lot a bit worse. The Thunder didn't really do anything. They traded Mike Muscala. And the Lakers totally rebuilt their bench, adding Jared Vanderbilt, adding Malik Beasley, adding D'Angelo Russell, adding Mo Bamba. The Lakers probably got significantly better. Are the Lakers going to avoid the play-in? I don't know. They're going to be right there. But when you look, one team behind the Blazers, the Lakers are currently 2 games back as I'm recording this. The West Coast games haven't finished as I'm recording this on Thursday evening. It is, Lakers are 2 games back of the Blazers. I think the Jazz are heading the other direction, and the Thunder are still going to be right there. Puncher's chance to stay in the mix. They didn't get any worse. The Warriors probably got a little bit better, adding Gary Payton. The Timberwolves got better. That's 2 teams, 8 and 9, ahead of the 10th place Blazers that got better. Pelicans, if Zion Williamson gets back, that'll be their big offseason move if he ever gets healthy, or big trade deadline move. Suns got significantly better. Clippers got a little bit better. Mavericks probably got better. I don't know if they got crazy better because of their defense, but I think they're going to be better. Like I'm confident in saying the Mavericks will be better in the regular season than with Kyrie Irving. And so Kings just right in the mix, didn't do anything. Grizzlies, minor move. Nuggets, minor moves, but those teams are pretty clear of everyone else. That means of the teams that are like ahead of the Blazers in the standings, pretty much only the Kings, which have a 4.5 game lead on the Blazers, and the Pelicans a 1.5 game, didn't make some sort of real significant moves to their starting lineup type of moves. And one team behind them, the Lakers, got significantly better on the bench. The Lakers couple that move with Rui Hachimura, who they had already traded for. One of the frustrations with the Blazers is that they had a puzzling, deflating, kind of bizarre trade deadline. So what just happened type of deadline. And plenty of other teams in the West made, ranging from minor moves to upgrade the bench to Kevin Durant level seismic moves. It is really hard to win a championship in the NBA. Most teams lose. I've said this a bunch in the show. It's in the last 40 years, less than half the league has won a title. it's, typically the teams on top stay on top. But the race to get there, particularly in a crowded Western Conference, it requires you to cash in your chips and truly, 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 truly go for it at some point. As the Suns did once by trading for Chris Paul, and they've done a second time now after, kind of building up that roster around Chris Paul with a championship level team to say, okay, that was close, but we weren't good enough, and let's cash it in one more time and really go for it again. It's what the Warriors are doing, where certainly dumping James Wiseman was a financial move, but instead of saving a massive amount of money, they went out and got someone that's going to help them. Gary Payton is a veteran that's going to help them. They got better. That's what it takes. The Lakers, for as much as I've clowned them on the show, they finally rebuilt their team in a serious and aggressive way to go for it by shipping out Russell Westbrook and going for it. Kind of mended a crappy decision that they'd made with other ones. You can stand pat if you can build around a superstar in their prime for a season. But if you do it for multiple years and you kind of make little moves around the margins and never truly press all in, you're counting on kind of the seismic rise of someone like Nikola Jokic to take you there. It's hey, we're pretty good. We'll trade for Aaron Gordon, and then Nikola Jokic will become one of the 3 best players in the world, and then we'll be a championship level team. Teams that win because they go all in. They spend bloated, massive bills, luxury tax bills. They spend a ton of money. They make aggressive moves to mortgage their future draft picks often, not always, but often. And they take swings knowing that their window for a championship is very narrow and that they will risk some of their future for what they can do in the present. The Blazers have yet to do that. They've yet to do that with Damian Lillard on the roster. They've made some nice moves. I think they've built even some really good teams around him, some very solid teams around him, and been consistently successful. But to say they really went for it have really gone for it, I think would be a misnomer. It isn't true. And now they're selling you on, okay, wait till the summer. And to that I say, I'll still be here because I make a show every day. And when they prove me wrong, we'll cover it the same way we cover this. And I'll be excited and have a bunch of fun, I love ball. I'm excited for whatever is next. And obviously we'll cover the rest of the season here. But today, this week, I left feeling how serious is this team about being really good? And how much do I trust them now that they have missed one part of the cycle or taken a step away from one part of the cycle to ask for that faith several months down the line? I would say my trust, personally, is dwindling a little bit. Maybe you have a rosier outlook than I do. You certainly can share it with me if you do. Appreciate you listening. We'll come back next week and do more shows. That's what we do. 5 days a week, coming at you Monday through Friday, free on all platforms. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.